Welcome to episode 15 of Books and Bourbon, the show that is a little bit about bourbon and mostly about books. We've got our hosts, myself, Caleb, we've got Matthew and Dave, and we're excited to bring to you another interview. So how's everybody doing? Welcome to the show.
Tell us where you guys are joining in from the comments. There's a lot of comments already coming through on here. Thank you for everyone that was here early. People were here early today.
We've got a popular guest, so that's exciting. He's brought a lot of people with him. So we got Jason from Austin. Jason, I've been wearing your new shirt that you got me. I mean, I got me, but thanks for the hookup. Love the armadillo shirt. I wear it and I get compliments everywhere. So good work there. So let us know.
Colorado Springs.
All right. Got Springfield, Missouri. Awesome. Got all kinds of
Lake City, Utah.
All over the place.
Well, last week I think Dave and I lost a bet, or maybe I lost a bet in terms of how hot it is in Phoenix. So let's begin with the weekly question. Matthew, how hot is it right now?
I can tell you how humid it is. Crazy. It's not very hot. Let me refresh. 88 degrees right now, but it's humid like crazy. It rained so much last night. Tampa, Florida. Where are you at right now, Caleb?
I am in Dallas. Soon to be its own country of Texas. I think they're going to secede from the union any day now. But it's over 100 here. And
it is. You're hotter then. All right.
It is. Well, cool. Well, we'll jump right in. But we're excited. This is episode 15, as we said. The podcast went live last week, so it's up on Spotify. So for those that prefer audio only, if you don't want to look at our ugly mugs, you're welcome to tune into the pod. New episodes should be rolling out weekly now. Matthew's been doing a really good job editing everything, trying to package that back up. And as part of it, actually, do you want to do that? You want to share some of the artwork now?
Yeah, we can do that real fast. So I'm going to cover up our faces for a second, even though I know it'll make everyone sad, but or maybe happy, either way. We've got some cover art we're trying to decide for Books and Bourbon. This will be the picture that will display all over iTunes and Spotify and all the different podcast platforms. So in the comments, vote for one of these numbers. Try and just choose one of which one stands out to you the best for the cover art for Books and Bourbon. And if one of you guys thinks you can do something better than one of these, submit your own designs that we can vote on those too. But just throw a number in the comments. We're going to compile some of these numbers and choose some of the new cover art for the podcast. I'll leave this up here for a second.
Matthew, what about the design that Caleb and I liked?
Which design?
You know, the design.
That design. Let me pull that one. 1 second.
We're going to have
the most creative design is what you're talking about.
We're going to have an optional number 6 here. And Dave, I still can't tell how serious you are about this or not, but I actually
do like it. Like at first it was a joke, but then now it's actually kind of grown on me.
It's growing on you? All right. I am downloading this right now and uploading it here.
That up. We're getting lots of 1s and 5s, so that's good. People like the bookends there. Any 2, 3s, and 4s. Let's see here. Unofficial tally. We got 5 number 1s.
I almost like number 5 too, with the number 1 font. You know, like the Books and Bourbon in gold.
Yep.
I think that would look really good on
the gold. Stands out a little bit better. It's easier to read somehow. I don't know why. It's pretty easy, but.
We do have 1 vote from Nate for number 3, but otherwise it's mostly 1s and 5s. So that's
wait till you guys see number 6.
Here it's uploaded. Here's the unofficial 6th option, everyone.
This is number 6.
Throw this up right here. It's a book toasting iPhone with Scout IQ. We'll have to change that to an Android phone if we want to do it. But
we got to also make sure Scout IQ's logged in. They're just on the splash screen there.
They are just on the splash screen.
Not going to scan a whole lot of books from that screen.
That was definitely the most creative design I think we got out of all of these was number 9, or we're calling it number 6 for the purposes of this voting. 6, yeah. So people like 6. Still number 1.
Okay, still number 1.
I'll flash that one back up here one more time.
We'll
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Everybody wants to keep commenting there. Again. Matthew, what are the main platforms it's live on? I know I found it on Spotify.
Right now it's on Spotify. iTunes, I believe, approved it. Pandora, I believe, approved it. And Stitcher might have approved it yesterday. There's a few other platforms. I'm not sure if they've gone through and actually approved it yet or not, but I know iTunes should have it. Spotify definitely does have it. Stitcher should. Pandora probably does right now.
What about Google Podcasts?
Google Podcasts, it was submitted to. I haven't got an email that was accepted yet, so I don't know if they like the bourbon theme or what, but maybe there's taking a little while to take that submittal.
Google takes their sweet time. Well, industry news, we'll jump to that. It's officially the start of textbook season, so we are now in the month of August. We'll have about 4 to 6 weeks of pretty healthy sales. I know that even with a lot of restricted textbooks out there, there still is a decent bump. I was actually touring Franklin Media this morning. I'm down here in Dallas doing some business meetings with them and a couple other clients. But they are, I really like their office. It took me a second to catch it. They had everything decorated up for Christmas. They had a Christmas tree. They had like some ornaments and lights and everything. And I'm trying to go like, do you guys just not take your decorations down? Because everything else was extremely neat and orderly. Dave, they give your warehouse a run for their money. It's incredibly organized. Makes me feel like a slob by comparison. But it took me long enough. This is really embarrassing. But I'm like, do you guys just leave your Christmas stuff up year round? And they just kind of looked at me and said, dude, it's the most wonderful time of the year. So they deal primarily in textbooks. This is obviously big for them. They're projecting, hopefully, going to get one of their best months ever. So we're pulling for them as well. But it's just Christmas in August because of textbook season. So sorry I missed out on their cleverness. But if you ever get a chance, I don't know if they do tours, but they're the real deal. Michael and James and Hunter and their crew. It was a pleasure to meet with them today and check out their Christmas trees. I feel bad that I didn't bring them presents. So, Dave, I do fewer textbooks. So every year I feel like textbook season, the bump, it used to be incredible. Like August, September was just really high. We dipped back down. December, we got a little bit of a bump. And then January was really high. I feel like as I've gotten more mature in my business and I've kind of been less focused on textbooks, that bump sort of has neutralized. Do you
not
still
been as dramatic?
It doesn't look like a camel anymore. It's a little more flat, like the world. I'm joking, by the way. We're not going to open that can of worms. But Dave, do you still see much of a textbook bump this time of year?
Yeah, I typically do. I will say that in 2020 and 2021, I did notice a sizable drop or decline in the bump. Maybe it's more kids just doing remote classes and just not buying books. I don't know exactly what it is, but the bump the last 2 years hasn't been as noticeable as, say, 2019 or even 2018.
Yeah, I know for us, it's been definitely a little bit less. So for those, if you do books, you should get some kind of a bump, even with like Prime Day. I know some of you, it's not as big as if you do online arbitrage or retail arbitrage, but in general, a rising tide lifts all ships. For those that have some textbooks sitting around and you're going, oh crap, I forgot it's textbook season, you've got a couple options. One, you can always merchant fulfill those and sell them same day. That's always a great option if you're behind the 8 ball. In terms of if you have time to get those in, textbook season typically peaks about mid-August. I'm actually going to share my screen real quick here. I want to teach you guys just one thing, and this is really helpful. I know Dave likes to poke around this site quite a bit. I don't do it as much. But if you ever have questions about what trends are out there, here's a pretty cool way to do it. So I'm going to share a window. Dave, you probably know where I'm going with this. So Google Trends, if you guys aren't familiar, what this is, you can search any term. You can use this to look at like product trends, or if you're selling private label products, it's really helpful to see seasonality. What this is relative search frequency. And you can search by default, it goes to the US or probably the country that you're in, and it defaults to 12 months, but you can zoom out and kind of see how that looks. But what you can see is relative search frequency for any term. So you can do like college books or textbooks. That's what I've searched here. And you can see that the peak search textbook or search term on Google for textbooks is the 3rd week of August. So August 22 to 28, it's 100. So that's as high as it gets. That's the most common. That's the highest frequency of search in the entire year. And this is broken out at a weekly level. So you can see that it starts to bounce up here, goes back low, and then the second highest peak, which is 70. So 70% of the search frequency as 2 weeks from now. is going to be the second week of January. And then there's a little bit of a bump in April as summer school typically kicks off. So whenever you have questions about how popular something is or when something may make sense, you can ask in the groups, or you can turn to your neighborhood friend, Google. And remember, the trend is your friends. So Dave, you said you feel like textbooks have waned the last 5 years. Let's see if that goes off. So every year you see the highest peak in August/September, and then we have a smaller peak in January. And it's interesting, they are actually getting a little more muted. So I don't know if that's because colleges, some are giving the books for free, some are doing digital. But it looks like 5 years ago, 2017 was the 100. It was as high as it got. 3 years ago, 2019 was also 100. So that was just as popular. And then it's actually interesting. It's actually starting to come down a bit. So there's less search frequency relative to what we saw 5 years ago and 3 years ago.
It was
Now,
right when COVID hit, it started changing the trend right there. It's pretty consistent before that.
Would definitely say COVID probably played a role in 2020 and 2021 for sure. It'll be interesting because most schools are back at full strength.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe this could be a little bet we put on it. Dave or Matthew, want to take the other side of the bet? I bet we don't get to 100, but I bet we get somewhere in the 80 to 90 range. I bet we beat 2020 and 2021.
I'll take under 80. I think it's going to stay under 80.
Okay. Let's clarify. Do you think it will not beat 2020 and 2021? Do you think it'll be lower than either of those two?
I think it'll be right around where 2020 was.
Okay. And
I think it'll be a touch higher than 2020, but not much at all. I think they'll be pretty much even.
Okay. So 2020, just to clarify, had the highest search frequency of 82. I'm going to say we get higher than that. So I'm going to say north of, I'll call it at 85.
I'll take the under on that.
You want to take the under on 85? Okay. And Matthew, what's your guess?
I think it's the same as David. It's going to be, I think, under 85.
I mean, I think this is what we should do is I think people should comment what they think it's going to be. And whoever gets the closest.
Should we bring in our guest for the day and have him put his 2 cents in as well?
All right, let's do it. We'll make a bet with all 4 of us. So this will be our industry news. So yeah, that's a great idea. Let's bring him in.
Hey, Mike.
What is up, gentlemen?
Gentlemen, use the term loosely. Welcome to the show. We're glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate, having the opportunity to come on here and talk books.
And it looks like you brought with you a bit of a posse. We had the chat kind of firing off even before we went live. So thanks for doing that. Looks like you bring a raving audience with you.
Yeah.
So we're going to put, we're not going to put money on this, but we're going to put some sort of a wager. I'm going to say 85 is my hunch in terms of what the relative search frequency is at the peak of textbook season this year over the last 5 years. David, you want to put an actual number? I'll take some notes here.
Or 83.
Okay, so Caleb 85, David 83. Matthew, what's your bet?
I'll say 79.
We're going under COVID year. And Mike, where do you want to come in at?
I'm going with 81.
81. All right. So I'm the high water mark. Matthew's low. David and Mike are somewhere in between, and time will tell. Are we going to put anything on the line here?
Just my pride.
All right. Pride it is. It's worth playing for. Cool. And if you guys are watching in the comments, guys and gals, go ahead and put your comments as well in terms of what relative search velocity that it has. And that'll be something fun too. Check out, it's just trends.google.com. You can plug in any kinds of words. Ooh, we got a bold guess from FBA part-timer says
back to 100.
That'll be interesting. So check it out. There's some fun search terms you can use. I think there's probably whole Twitter pages dedicated to Google Trends. There's probably TikTok channels as well. So play around with it. It's really fascinating. You can learn a lot about trends in individual states, countries, the world, etc. So have fun with that and enjoy. Well, Mike, thanks for being here. We always tell our guests we appreciate you sharing your expertise, your journey, your story, but mostly your time. Your time is very important. And thank you for giving us an hour to an hour and a half of your time for this show. So why don't you tell us just a little bit of a background, where you're located, and just a little about your business. Then we'll pause, get to what we're drinking, and then dive into the interview.
All right, quick background. So I was born and raised in Philadelphia, spent my high school years there, went out of state for college to Michigan State, came back home to Philly, recognized that, I needed to get out of the city. I was tired of the city life. Relocated to central Pennsylvania. I live right outside Harrisburg now. Your former guests, Miles and John Moscarella, I literally can drive there today and hang out with them if I wanted to. So I kind of thrift all the stores they used to thrift when they started out selling books on Amazon, which is pretty cool. They've moved on to, they graduated from books. But for me, I'm staying put for the time being and for the foreseeable future. So I go around the thrift stores, scan all the books, the CDs, DVDs, and I'm basically 98% FBA. So I live in a third floor apartment. That's another thing. Every book I find has to come up 3 flights of steps, get packed, and then go back down 3 flights of steps. So it's a unique experience, but it just goes to show, anybody can do this. It's not, there's no boundaries to getting started with books on Amazon.
Mike, do you have one of those like the hand trucks that like have the 3 wheels and go up stairs?
All I have is my arms, man. And I actually never had I finally invested and got myself a fold out dolly for bulk buys and everything that I can throw my boxes on and at least wheel them to my car to make my life a little bit easier.
You just after that workout, I guess.
Yeah, I mean it's rough, and that's kind of I'm thinking to the future. I can't do this when I'm much older. 3 flights ain't going to work unless I have one of those Stairmasters I can just sit on and carry my books up.
Or next place, you just have to find a ground level apartment or a house.
Yeah, that's definitely I'm on the fence about getting a storage unit currently, and that's the big motivator to not have all the books in here and have more space, because you see behind me here, my wife also operates a business out of the house. So I have a little corner, 10% of the room, everything else is hers. So that's why Amazon works best for me.
Perfect. Well, on the plus side, you can cancel your CrossFit membership. You've got that built in. But as I don't know how old you are, I'm guessing you're about the same age as us. Dave was talking about there's some really bad sickness going around. It's called over 30. And once you hit that, you can definitely damage your back. So be careful. Make sure you're stretching, and don't take your back for granted, because once you pull that or damage it, it's a long road back.
Yeah, I definitely think getting ran around working in retail, being a store manager with retail company CVS, even though the books seemed like heavy lifting, it was nothing compared to some of the days I had. So it really hasn't registered yet. Hey, I need to slow it down a little bit.
Yep. Well, and it's built-in efficiency management, because if you're not being efficient and you're bringing too many books up, you're definitely going to feel it. So it's I bet your ASP is a little higher than those that live on lower floors. That'd be an interesting study to do. Average ASP by how many floors of stairs you have to navigate. Well, thanks for the intro. We'll dive into your story in just a second. Because it is books and bourbon, we're gonna take a quick pause and talk about what we're drinking. Mike, I know you don't drink or haven't drank in a while, so you're gonna lead us off here. Is that just regular Gatorade? Is that G2? What do you got?
We have a lemon lime, regular Gatorade. I did enough drinking at Michigan State University to last a lifetime.
Did you burn any couches?
No, but I've probably seen a few burning in my time.
I'm a big Tom Izzo fan. I grew up in Michigan. Michigan State's my team, so I'm a little jealous you got to hang out. Well, not hang out, but watch Draymond Green, Drew Neitzel, and all those boys. All right, so you got Gatorade. Dave, are you on the instant coffee kick again?
No, actually, I'm sponsored by SBYB.
There it is.
Yeah, Bill left this parting gift, and then I got some Coke, and it tastes like my early 20s for sure.
Tastes like regret and sugar.
Yeah, just bad nights.
Matthew, what do you got over there?
I've got a repeat. I think it was actually our very first episode I had this one. It's a Chestnut Farms bourbon right here. No good backstory on this. It's just a good bourbon. Yeah, I like it. It's smooth, easy to drink.
That's a good story. I bought it for you.
I know it is. That's a good story. No, you bought me the Smoke Wagon unfiltered.
Oh, well, let's not mince words.
Actually, at the same time, though, you're right.
I stopped at a Total Wine today because I think they distribute a lot of Chestnut Farms, and I saw bottles of it. I almost sent you a picture, but then I
you should have. I like it. It's good. Yeah, the Smoke Wagon uncut, unfiltered. That one was really good, though. That was good.
Gem out of Vegas. Well, I'm on the road, so I didn't feel like buying a whole bottle and just leaving most of it behind. I did swing by a couple liquor stores just briefly. I've been in and out of meetings, but I guess Weller 12 just dropped in Texas. So I was hoping to get my hands on it. It's like a $250 bottle that retails for like 35. So I was hoping I could find it. Unfortunately, Total Wine did not have it, or if they did, I wasn't able to sweet talk anybody. So I'm drinking a local delicacy. For those from Texas, you'll recognize this. I've got a Shiner box. So I'll be drinking that. And that's it for the beverages. So we will jump in. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, Mike, let's dive into your story. So you went to Michigan State. You finally said, I can't handle the winters there. You got the heck out of there. And you went back to the East Coast. And walk us into what you were doing after college and what your job was looking like, but, BB before books.
Before books, when I first got back from college, I actually worked in like asset protection. So basically, down in the city, there's a lot of retail theft. So I would I worked at Toys R Us, plain clothes. So I would walk around and basically apprehend people that were stealing merchandise from the store. So that's something that you definitely shouldn't do today. I would not recommend it for anybody. Those times are a little bit different, 12 years ago. So I started there and I kind of worked my way up to retail.
Before you go further, we need to get some stories from that. What kind of training did they give you? Did you carry a weapon? And what did this whole scenario look like?
No weapon. We had handcuffs. So there was, you needed to have 5 steps. So you had to see them enter the department, select the merchandise, conceal the merchandise, and then pass all points of sales, which then you could apprehend them, which was usually the vestibule of Toys R Us's no longer exists, but you had to wait for them to pass all those points, and you couldn't lose eye contact at any time. So it wasn't you couldn't just sit on the cameras because you're a one-person show. So you're basically out on the floor, just wearing whatever you want to wear, blending in, and catching the bad guys, because most of the time it was people stealing stuff to go sell at the bodegas down in the neighborhood to basically get drug money and whatnot. But like I said, those are different times. People weren't carrying, crazy weapons like they do today. I never had any kind of instances like that. I had a lady, try to bite me a few times, and it just, I have crazy stories that they're probably not even appropriate for YouTube. So it was crazy times.
I think we're going to take a pivot and just talk about stories with Mike. We're just going to forget books and just talk about shoplifting. How prevalent was it? If you were there for 6 or 8 hour shifts, did it happen every single day that someone tried to steal something?
Basically. So in a given year, I'd probably have around 150 cases. So that's 150 people I caught throughout the year. It really, kind of like book selling, you have your seasons. Get closer to Christmas, of course, you're going to have people trying to push out full carts of merchandise. And it's just kind of, when you're down in the city, you kind of can almost spot them when they're coming in the door, especially to a Toys R Us. If you don't have any kids with you, there's telltale signs, that something's not right. So it was pretty easy to do, given the area that I was working and grew up in. You kind of know the riffraff of the area. So it was exciting times. I probably could talk about it forever, but I definitely wouldn't try it again today. And I'm glad I got out.
Yeah. Nowadays they're just letting people walk out of the store.
Yeah.
Most stores are just taught, and I've heard it both ways. One, they're concerned with safety of their employees, but two, I forget where I saw this, but they said they don't want to alienate a customer because they're probably going to come back and buy things later. And so if you go and arrest them or even like yell at them and try and get the merchandise back, you run the risk of losing a customer, which kind of seems, I guess I see some of the merit in it. Just one story. What's the most egregious thing you ever saw someone try and steal?
So this is probably the best story from them all. It's kind of crazy. So a lady came in with a stroller covered up with, a baby blanket, and she goes to the formula aisle, fills up the stroller with baby formula, puts a baby blanket over it. And, when me and my partner go to stop her, she says, "Oh no, the baby's sleeping." Well, we know there's no baby in the carriage. It's just all formula. So she's playing the role like, "Hey, don't touch don't touch the stroller. There's a baby in there. No, don't wake the baby." And it wound up being, a few $1,000s in formula, because you could fit a good amount in there. And some of those cans of formula will run you $60 a piece, basically, even back then. So that was pretty funny that she actually thought we believed there was a baby in there, and, we were just going to let her walk out the door with all that formula.
Well, it's I don't mean to laugh at that. I'm sure there's people that are down on their luck and that's all they know. Or, there possibly might be people with YouTube channels trying to teach people how to be pickpockets for sure. I guess you could just move to California. I think they're not pressing charges if it's under $500 of value as well. I know there's a lot of stores are shutting down over there because they can't handle all the theft that's going on. So definitely a different world today than it was those 12 years ago. Well, fascinating. Well, if we ever meet up in real life, I want to hear more of those stories over some Gatorade. So after Toys R Us, what did you were doing that? How long did you do that role of theft
I
perfector?
I think I was with Toys R Us probably for about 4 years, and then they figured, they kind of went the same route like you were saying. It's just too much of a liability, so they actually did away with the whole asset protection program. They just had a few people working on the inside for like internal theft and stuff like that. They weren't worried about your customer coming in stealing things anymore. So I jumped out of there. I got into now I'm looking at it like all the companies I work for have gone out of business. So I went to Kmart next. So I was doing this, I was doing the same thing at Kmart, and I got out at Kmart. I got into CVS as a manager in training, and I was a store manager there. And that's where I left my store manager job at CVS to do books full time.
That's awesome. So you were at CVS, you worked your way up to manager, so you're obviously doing fairly well. Was this something that you were kind of thinking, hey, this is for me long term, or did you always have these like elements in your life that you go, man, I really am an entrepreneur?
No, I always had those elements in my life. When I was in college, I was going for business marketing, so I kind of knew like I wanted to be involved in a business one way, shape, or form. But with CVS, it's one of those things like, yeah, the money was it was all right, but for like what they expected, to work by yourself all day, it just wasn't for me. And I knew like it was a building step for me, and they had a decent. The only reason I probably hung on as long as I did is that they actually had a decent retirement fund, so they matched 5%. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to keep piling it in there, my 401k, my Raw, and see how long I can deal with it until I can build something up on the side. And then I can just, leave my keys and go.
Yeah. So if you put 5% of your paycheck in, they would match that dollar for dollar up to another 5%.
Yep.
Man, that's huge. If anybody still works for the man or the woman, if you do that and your company offers a match, you're foolish if you're not putting that money in, whatever it takes to do. If you're getting someone to match you even 75 cents on the dollar, I think that's what J&J did when I worked for them. That's free money. You got to do it. Especially when you compound that over, 30, 35 years before retirement. That's a big deal. Did you do anything while you were at Michigan State other than drinking and flipping couches? Did you do anything entrepreneurial? Did you kind of have glimmers of entrepreneurship along the way, or was this just kind of an idea percolating in your mind?
It was just an idea. I was, when we were in high school, when I graduated in 2006, it was almost like mandatory that you went to college. Everybody that I graduated with, everybody went to a college somewhere, usually Penn State, one of their, off-site campuses. And it was just one of those things. I was the first one in my family to go to college. I was never like a great student. I was a B student, C student. I wasn't, trying to be head of the class or anything like that. So it's just like, you know what? And I liked the Spartans. That was like my team when I was in high school. So I was like, I have the grades to get in there. So why not try it? So that was kind of like the main, it's silly to think about. Like I like their sports teams and that's why I went there for college. But, I'm glad I did. I learned a lot. It's a whole different world up there compared to the city. So it kind of showed me that there is an outside world outside of Philadelphia and that it's pretty much a lot nicer outside of Philadelphia. So that's what I learned.
Yeah, it's a big step. I think anybody that grows up in the country should go visit a city or live there, ideally for 6 months to a year at a minimum, and then vice versa. If you grow up in a city, I think it's really important to travel to just a country or somewhere rural. Just get out of your comfort zone and just realize that there's different ways to live life, especially in America, especially in the world. If you can get out of the country, even better. So, all right. So you had these ideas in your head of, hey, I'm kind of a business oriented individual. I like small business. I like entrepreneurship. You're at CVS. At what point did you kind of say, all right, enough is enough? Was there like one inciting moment, or was this just something that had been building up for a long time?
It was building up, but there's a bunch of moments where I was just like, basically as a store manager, you're responsible. So Matt decides not to show up to work at all this week. I'm stuck going in. And as the salary manager, guess what? You know, you're working for free basically, and you're not going to get those hours back. You know, they're going to be, no matter what they tell you, you're not going to get those hours back. So it got to a point where basically I almost felt like I was an on-call like doctor, you know, surgeon, because I had to be available 24/7. One thing that kept happening was every Sunday after we closed, we were right next to a beer distributor. So they stayed open a lot later. So what would happen is, you know, some drunkards would come up and yank on the front door, and it sets off the alarm. So after working all day, I got to go get dressed, drive back over to the store, and walk the store with the police every Sunday. It happened for like a few months in a row, and I was just like, this is rough. I can't do this no more.
Yeah. So eventually that kind of pushed you over the edge. So did you explore anything else, or how'd you stumble across book content, Amazon content? What led you down this side road?
So I started out on eBay and I sold everything. So, you know, you back then it was Rake and Profit, Bonafide Hustler, like all the OGs of reselling, just anything they can get their hands on to flip for money. So I was kind of trying to do the same thing on the side. I had a few of those big storage bins full of stuff, you know, just anything I could find to sell for a profit. Didn't matter if it was a shirt, if it was clothes, anything that I could. But I never, during those times, I never once even looked at a book or even thought about going into the book section. So I was just like, yeah, there ain't nothing over there. Nobody reads books or buys books anymore. So that's where I started. And then Romer came along. Like you say, he's in every one of these videos one way or another. And him partnering up with Steve and them kind of doing their thing, that's what kind of turned me on the book. So I just went from there and said, I ain't got nothing to lose. I'm already knee deep in eBay. It can't be any worse than having tubs full of stuff your wife's yelling at you about, like, get it out of the house, it's all junk.
And so you were doing eBay on the side, right? You were going around and thrifting and kind of following Rake In and Bonafide Hustler and those gentlemen.
Yeah, definitely 100%. It wasn't something where I just up and quit, and I wouldn't recommend anybody doing that. Even if you have funds set aside, you want to test the waters first, make sure it's something that you enjoy doing and that it's feasible on the income side. So even though I was working 60 hours a week, I always tell everybody, if you hate your job enough, you're going to put in the time outside of it to build what you want to build. So that's kind of what I did. It took a while. When I first started out with Amazon books, I even say to this day, when people are like, oh, I sent in one box this week. Well, when I started out, my goal was to send in one full box every 2 weeks. And that's nothing. I mean, you're talking 35 books. So it just goes to show, you got to start slow and just build it up from there.
Yeah, but what I love about that is you decided to be consistent. And we have the 100 book challenge. Matthew's probably got it all queued up here, the 100bookchallenge.com. But it doesn't matter what the goal is necessarily. It's most important to actually pick something. So you said, I'm going to do a box every other week. So go back to eBay. What were you focusing on in that world? What were some of the categories you went to? You said you didn't touch media. What was your go-to when you walked into a thrift store?
Believe it or not, I used to make a killing selling VCRs. So you used to be able to walk into a Goodwill and get a VCR for $5. And believe it or not, we probably don't watch VHS tapes, but there's a lot of people that do, and there's a lot of money in them, especially if you can find one with a remote or like a combo. And I used to be able to find those things everywhere, and they don't even exist in thrift stores anymore. And I'm out in thrift stores all the time, and I rarely see a VCR anymore that's for sale. But that was like my main focus, was some of the larger electronics like that you could get for real cheap. I did a little bit of shoes, clothing, the pictures and everything with eBay kind of just pushes you away from clothing. More hard goods, I would say, that I started out with compared to anything else.
Yep. And then you made the transition because Romer. So this is literally just a walk down memory lane of all of our previous guests here. And we do have an impromptu Pennsylvania meetup kind of brewing. So we've got Kelby saying we should do a meetup. Deborah says that'd be awesome. Amy says she's in. Mike is in. So everybody that's in PA, I don't know the best way to get a hold. I don't know if Mike, if you want to try and coordinate this, or if we just want to send everybody to Flips for Miles since he spoke up first.
No, it's got to be Miles, because I brought this up previously because Warner did one up in Wisconsin. I said, Miles, when you doing ours in PA? So he already planted the bug. He just got to get it orchestrated here.
Everybody that wants to do a PA meetup or Pennsylvania meetup, you need to do like Turkey Hill. You got to do everything that's very Pennsylvania oriented. Are you're not in? Are you still in Philly?
No, I'm in Middletown. It's literally right outside Harrisburg.
Okay. La Colombe, I think, started in Philly, right? In Fishtown? Have you heard of that coffee shop?
No.
Man, that's one of my favorite coffee shops, but it's a different city. So everybody that wants to do a meetup, I know Rakin does some of these in Connecticut. You said Warner did one in Wisconsin. So if you want to do a meetup in PA, out in still Eastern PA, right?
Yeah, Eastern Central, give or take.
Cool. So if you're going to do that, if you want to meet up, everybody hit up Flips for Miles. I know he's big on Instagram. He's big on Twitter. So hit him up, bug him, pester him until he makes it happen. So go follow Flips for Miles. Flips the number 4 miles. And I believe it's that on Instagram and Twitter. All right. So you watched, do you remember which video you saw of Romer that was talking about books?
It's funny because they actually made a video the other day. Romer and John Muscarella, Side Hustle Experiment. He interviewed him back in 2020, I believe, in April. And he just interviewed him talking about, this guy's making X amount of dollars selling books in central Pennsylvania. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in central Pennsylvania. I can be this guy. So that kind of was the video that I was like, you know what, let me just give it a shot and see if it's something that's going to work out, and what it is in comparison to eBay, because at the time I wasn't really happy with eBay, and just the amount of work you have to put in for eBay, you don't get as much as return on your time as I think when it comes to Amazon. So I was just like, I got nothing to lose. I understand a little bit of reselling, and selling books, with Scout IQ, it's kind of foolproof. I say it all the time. You don't need to understand, you don't need to know authors or anything. You have the software at your hands. To this day, I don't know that much about books. I learn when I do bulk buys and I got to look things up for eBay. But if you got a scanner and the app, I mean, you're good to go. If I could, train some chimpanzees to do this for me, I could send them out to the thrift stores and cut them loose and I'd be good to go.
Can we pause real quick? So you've got a pen in your right hand. So are you taking notes as we go here? Then you got your ring scanner on your left hand. I don't know, Matthew and Dave, if you guys caught that.
I didn't catch that.
I swear by this thing.
So do you sleep with this? What is this, just always part of your appendages now, or what?
So I believe efficiency is important, right? So when you're scanning books and you're pulling them off the shelf, it's funny because I ran into a scanner the other day, and I don't run into them often. And he kind of had one, where you got to get up there and kind of get it. But with this guy, it's almost swivel-like, and it gives you such an advantage when you're scanning, especially on higher shelves and weird locations, that I feel like this is such a time saver. And I just got lucky getting this. I started out with this. I seen a Reezy video covering scanners, I believe, and this was one of them. And I'm like, you know what? It's a little bit more expensive. I'm just going to go with it, and I love this thing.
Oh, they're great. I just love that you have it on your hand literally during the interview.
Mike, how much do you pay for that ring scanner, if you don't mind me asking?
When I paid, it was $74.99, I think, $75. So, I mean, it's worth it for me. I've had it since day one. It hasn't broke. I've dropped it plenty of times. My wife has the same one when she decides to come out and scan with me, and she likes it too. So
when those first came out, they entered the market back probably even earlier than when we were using them, but we started using them back in 2016, 2017. And those suckers were $200 a pop, and they would break all the time. I mean, we would just log thousands and thousands of scans on them, and we're just ripping through them. And then gradually you saw the price go from 200 to 180, 150, and then 70. I've seen some at 60. I don't know how reliable they are, but it's amazing. Technology just gets cheaper and cheaper every year.
It's a deflationary by very nature.
There's 2 different models. So there is an orange button on the side and a yellow button. So I believe the orange button's the one you want to go with if you get one. But just be wary, there are 2 different ones, and I'm sure the other one is probably junk like you're talking about.
Well, there's one. Is that a 2D barcode scanner as well?
Yes. Yep.
So the 2D is really important. One, if you're going to do merchant fulfilled orders and use software that has 2D barcodes, but 2, you can actually have it at an angle. You can scan it sideways. They're 1D barcode scanners. You have to kind of orient your hand so that it's exactly parallel to the barcode to get it. But we use the exact same ring scanner in our warehouse. It's extremely efficient. It allows you to move piles of books and still have, full access to it without having to set it down. Because if you're anything like me and half forgetful, you put your glasses down and forget where they are. And we do the same with our scanners. So the ring scanners make a huge difference.
I've got a box, a Tupperware thing full of dead ring scanners. Probably got 50 in them.
You still have it?
Yeah. Well, because like so we stopped using them because they were just they were breaking once every 4 months for us. And I mean, we would hit per scanner. Let me just do the quick math on it. So I'd say per scanner, we would log like close to 500,000 scans before they started like really crapping out.
It's a lot of button presses.
It's a lot of button presses. And then so I would salvage like pieces from the old ones. I got really good at fixing those things. It was like you tear it apart and you could Frankenstein things together. But eventually we reverted back to like a handheld USB old school. What are they? Symbol barcode scanner, the DS 2909 or whatever, 2808.
Oh, the SIM code.
Yeah. Like just the cheap one. It's like $20 off of eBay. We just use those now because they're like Nokia phones. They're indestructible.
Yeah, they get the job done. Well, I didn't mean to get off on the scanner tangent here, but I just thought it was great that you're always at the ready there, Mike. Dave, one last thought. You should dig up that box of 50 graveyard scanners and figure out some sort of like modern art piece that you could put up in your warehouse. I think I could just picture just a beautiful, some kind of art, maybe geometric in shape, something cool. You got a lot of pieces there.
I'll just drop them all in like epoxy resin, and then I'll be like $5,000 worth of scanners.
I love it. Well, don't leave them in a box. The world deserves to see all of those.
For sure.
So, well, fantastic. All right, Mike. So you got the barcode scanner and you said, all right, I don't really believe people are still reading books, but if Avery and John can do it and they're doing YouTube videos, it must be possible. Do you remember your first experience scanning books? Were you more nervous as opposed to going in and looking for items for eBay? Was it weird using technology? That's one of the biggest feedback we get is when people start out, they're kind of like, do you just walk into a store and scan the books? And what if someone talks to you or looks at you funny? Do you remember that first experience?
Yeah, it was actually me and my wife. We went out to a thrift store for the first time. She didn't have a scanner. I just had mine just to test it out. And it is kind of weird at first because, you just feel weird. You're in a place scanning stuff. And there's always going to be somebody else in the thrift store, most likely. And if you have your sound on or anything like that, they're going to hear what's going on and be like, hey, or just like give you a look. And you kind of can feel when somebody's looking at you or passing behind you. But I got over that pretty quick, just being in retail and always dealing with people and having, regular customers and just having conversations with every customer. I was kind of more like, I guess, hardened to it. So it really didn't bother me as much. But I definitely get it a lot. Newer people feel awkward and weird when they go in the store and scan. And, I always tell everybody, if somebody asks a question, I every single time somebody asks me what I'm doing, I explain it to them. And, you having a conversation with them, explaining what you do might turn into, them being like, hey, I got books if you want them. So I always say everybody, just be honest, even if it's an employee. I mean, most Goodwill employees that talk to me about it, they're curious as to what you're doing and they probably think it's cool. So it's like, just be honest with people. And it's not weird, everybody else in the store. I'm sure there's people scanning, clothing or looking up other items. We're just kind of more like stationary and looking at the books. And a lot of times there's not a lot of traffic at the book. So they see you standing over there pulling out every single book, probably thinking you're crazy. But, just be honest with the people that have questions and be wary of your surroundings too. You don't want to be leaving, your phone out on the shelf or anything. If you're in, if you have a nicer phone. For me, I have an old Android, so I can set my phone on the shelf. And if somebody takes it, that's fine. It's an upgrade for me. I'll be able to get myself a newer phone. But it definitely can be weird starting out. But for me, working in retail was just, another day. I'm just in another retail store.
Yeah, I would echo that same mentality in terms of just being honest and telling people what you do. More often than not, it actually led to exactly what you said. Someone would go, well, hey, I've got a collection, or my grandma has a collection, or whatever. And that often led to, not that I always took them up on it. You didn't want to just go to a stranger's house that you just met at Goodwill. But that's how horror movies start. That could be a whole new Netflix commentary. But it often led to opportunities. It led to, exchanging business cards. And that's another one too. I don't think business cards are that relevant, but it's nice to have, especially when someone goes, hey, that's really cool. Do you have a way I can contact you? And if you just have a card in your wallet or in your pocket, that always leads to, potentially new business. So the more you talk about what you do, the more you're open about it, that tends to pay off, because a lot of people have books laying around. There's something about our culture that just doesn't like the thought of throwing a book away. And so that's one reason that books continue to get repurposed and reused over and over and over again. So all right, so you set a goal. Did you switch immediately from eBay and jump into books? You mentioned you set a goal of 1 box every other week. So how long did that remain the goal? And then when did you start kind of ramping up from there?
It remained a goal until I basically left CVS. So it got to a point where my eBay income was getting close to my CVS income. So I decided, hey, one day I had enough. It was a terrible, district manager, the whole 9 yards. And I left my keys in the office, and that was it for me. I mean, I'm not somebody to just quit a job, but it got to the point where your mental health has to come into consideration at some point, and your outside life. It's not just work. It takes a toll on everybody in your household, and your mental health, and that's a huge thing that I really didn't realize was such a huge problem in this country, is mental health, until you're really down in the thick of it, and every day is like, oh no, this sucks. I got to get up and go to work and be miserable again. So I literally, middle of my shift, left my keys in the office. They never even tried to contact me to talk me off the ledge or anything like that. So I basically wasted 10 years when I worked there in high school, and came back all for nothing, just because the company got to a point where they didn't care about their employees no more. And it just goes to show, if you have an employee, treat them right, and treat them how you want to be treated, because the people are all you got at the end of the day.
Yeah, preach that. So when you walked out, if you could go back in time, would you have left earlier? It sounds like.
Oh, 100%. So another factor was, my wife Deb's business. She sells cat and dog toys online. So she's sitting at home living the life, drinking, whatever she wants, taking breaks whenever she wants. It's just, she was living the life, and she was making a full-time income doing this. So it even made me realize more, like, she's happy with what she's doing, and she can do it on her own time frame. So she was trying to push me out the door way ahead. But like I said, I'm not somebody to just up and quit something. So she was probably telling me about a year before I actually left my keys in the office that, just quit. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I'm like, well, I got the retirement fund rolling, and maybe it'll get better, but it didn't get any better. So in hindsight, I probably should have left earlier, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah, you definitely can't change it. So remember what month and year you quit your job?
I believe it was the end of 2019.
Okay, so a couple months later, COVID rears its ugly head. What did that look like for your business? Was there a lot of fear? Did you just stop going out and thrifting? Was everything closed? Do you remember that? Because you finally got up the nerve, quit your job, walk away. You're starting to get your feet under you, and then all of a sudden, a couple months later, everything changed.
I kind of got lucky because I didn't instantly jump out of eBay. So I had a lot of stuff laying around the house that I still hadn't gotten rid of, or basically sold on eBay. So I still had inventory to carry me over. And like we spoke before, I had money put aside. So this wasn't something where I was just flying blind. I had enough to last me probably over a year to cover all my expenses. So I keep my expenses low. I operate debt free. I don't do no credit cards or anything like that. So my expenses are pretty low in comparison to other people. And I had enough money in the bank where, I probably could have made it roll into, 3 or 4 years if everything was locked down. I still would have been fine and figured out a way to make it work.
Man, you're speaking my language there. I think that's huge. Again, if you have very low cost of living, and if you've kind of purposely kept your lifestyle low, it's a lot easier to take risks and to try and step away. And especially you were in a spot with CVS that they weren't treating you well, they weren't respecting you. You needed to get out of there for your own health. And because you were building something on the side, and two, you kept your cost to be your overhead very low. That made that decision a lot easier. So we have a lot of people that watch this show that are kind of kicking the tires, thinking maybe entrepreneurship is for them. It sounds scary. What would you tell to anybody that is watching this that has a job that says, man, I'd love to be an entrepreneur, but I'm just afraid to get started? What are just some tangible things that from your experience that you did that you could offer them as just sort of an olive branch of, hey, here's some steps you could take?
It doesn't have to be an overnight decision. You can work on multiple things at the same time. And like I said, even though I was being worked to the bone 60 hours a week with CVS, you still find a day, 2 days a week where you can go out and work on what you want to work on, whether that's being in the book business or any business in general. If it's something you're passionate about or something you feel like, hey, this might be for me, you're going to find time to fit it in one way or another. And listen, I was already miserable at CVS for 4 years. So what's another 3 to 6 months going to do to me, right? I made it this far. I can suck it up. If you know there's an exit at the end of the tunnel, you're going to be more motivated than ever to just keep building on the side and then get to that point where, there's no better feeling than leaving a job you don't like. Like, I can't even describe the feeling I had when I left the keys in the office and walked out of CVS. So don't think of it as, hey, I got to quit today and I'm relying on that income immediately. That shouldn't be the way you do it, because it's most likely not going to work. You want to build it up, proof of concept, see if it's even feasible in your area, and then make the decision, have money set aside in case things go haywire. And in today's economy, everywhere is hiring. So if worst comes to worst, you can just hop back in and probably find a better paying job anyway.
Well, one related to that, I think we're going to see the labor pool significantly shift over the next couple months. It's still everybody. It's in employees' favor right now. You can pretty much knock on a door. Every business says they're hiring. I think with inflation, with the recession, with some of tech laying off people, a lot of white collar jobs are going away right now. I think it's going to switch the other way. And if you want to make yourself to where you don't have to compete with everybody else for limited jobs, if it comes to that, having something on the side is really good. So the fact that you had built it on the side, you had that ready to go, you kept your lifestyle creep very low as well. That allowed you, when the stress rose, you were able to quit. And I forget if maybe a president said it, maybe Franklin. I think the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. So because you planted that tree, because you did something on the side, you were able to sort of reap that fruit and to take advantage of the growth that was already there. And I would say to those that are watching that haven't yet started and said, maybe this isn't for me, or maybe it's too risky, or just, I don't know, it sounds too good to be true. Just get started, dip your toes in the water. We like to joke, but we say it in all seriousness, books are the gateway drug. It's a great way to get started. It's typically an ungated category. They're everywhere. And it's a fairly straightforward way to get started. And then go back and watch some of the other episodes. There's lots of ways that you can scale things up. So we looked at your scanning numbers, Mike, as in the pre-show. You just crossed a pretty impressive number barrier. Do you remember what that threshold was?
I think I'm like, what, level 18 now, over 150,000 scans.
Yeah, I think said you were about 155K, which is impressive. So you've put the work in. You've kissed a lot of frogs to find the princesses. So tell us about what does your current inventory levels look like? What are your kind of year-to-date sales? What kind of volume are you doing right now?
I sit around right around 2,800 currently. That's all cherry picking or bulk buys. But bulk buys, I'm not sending in, stuff that I wouldn't send in if I was cherry picking. So I'm picky even with the bulk buys. I am a little bit involved in other media, CDs and DVDs. I just felt like, it's within the same category of media. And usually they're located in the same place when you go into most thrift stores. So, I found a way to get, ungated in that for super cheap. So it's not like I went way out of my way. $20 to invest in your business to have a whole nother category on Amazon. It's a no-brainer in my opinion. So I am getting a little bit more involved in that, but books are still 95+% of my business. Last month we did right around a little bit over $7,500 in sales. So that's kind of where I'm at, and it's building month over month. So hopefully by the end of the year, I'll hopefully have at least a $12,500 month in sales. And honestly, it just takes time. It's not nothing that's going to happen overnight. But if you put in the time and effort, and the resources are out there for everybody to get started. That's kind of why I started the whole YouTube channel. When I started, there were resources, but today there's even more. So I just want somebody to be able to start today and have all the, resources at their hand to go out and scan and send in their first box. And the biggest thing with books is you don't have to spend a lot of money to get started. It's super cheap to get involved. You don't need any fancy stuff. I mean, I use Amazon Seller Central up until May of this year to list every single book. So I kind of like the headaches I went through with Seller Central and the 30 up labels. You got 5 pages and they're not in order. So I kind of did it the hard way, I guess. And I really didn't have to looking back, but I'm glad I did because you learn a lot doing it the hard way.
For sure. And again, that mentality of just getting started, you can get paralysis by analysis and get confused and say, well, I got to figure this software and this label printer and, oh, this is frustrating. This technology doesn't work. or you can just jump in, and it might not be elegant, might not be perfect, but it just works. And when you do that, then it makes it, a lot more possible to appreciate it. And again, a lot of people have the ideas and never actually get started because they just sort of quit before they get started. So I think that's really important as well. So flash forward, well, I guess a couple more questions related to your current business. Are you still mostly cherry picking from thrift stores? Have you developed some relationships? Do you have backroom access, as Avery likes to talk about? What's kind of your sourcing buffet, if you want to call it that?
So as a one person operation, your best bet is to have as many hooks in the water as you can. So I believe it or not, I've made thousands and tens of thousands of dollars off Craigslist. So everybody, that comes to my YouTube channel wants to get involved in books. I always tell them you can't just rely on your thrift stores. You got to have other sources coming your way. So you can put an ad out on Craigslist. I pay by the pound. So 15 cents a pound, I'll buy your books off Craigslist. So I know that's a little high when compared to, people that are just dealing with bulk and Gaylords and everything. But what the thing is with that is you're getting somebody's collection. So it's different than just a random pile of books. Most of these people have book sets that are going to be valuable that you can sell on eBay or, even on Amazon if it's a complete set. And you just have to have as many sources coming your way as you can. Yes, I still go to thrift stores, probably 3 to 5 days a week. But I also have other, sources. And one backroom access source actually came from my Craigslist ad that says I pay for books. Well, I had a library reach out and say, hey, we have an overflow of donations every month. You can just take them off our hands. We don't want to deal with them. So once a month, I go to a library, fill up my car with books, and you could pay nothing for it. I donate to the library. I always say if you have a relationship, even if it's free, you kind of want to, solidify that relationship, and you're donating to a library, so it's going to a good cause anyway. So that's kind of what I do. Even though it's free, I donate to the library, and it's just one of those sources. Business cards, definitely you got to have business cards. We even have like a flyer template that you can hang up at like gas stations and everything. We buy your CDs, DVDs, books by the pound. We pay 20 cents a CD, 20 cents a DVD, and basically that's available to anybody that wants it. All I got to do is ask. So that's the biggest thing. If you're willing to take the step today, every resource is out there. Like I'm transparent with everything. I don't have any little secrets that I keep from anybody. And maybe that's necessarily a bad thing in some people's eyes, but I see it as if somebody would help me along the way, maybe I could be at where I'm at now, a year ago. So that's the whole reason of the YouTube, is just to help people get started and have every resource be free. That's basically going to make you be successful. It's almost impossible if you started selling books today, most likely you're not going to fail if you put in the time. All the resources are out there to understand how it works, from sending in your first shipment to the nuances of Amazon's back end and repricing. Everything is out there for you. If you put in the time, you're going to be successful.
I love it. And you're exactly proof of that. Matthew put a link up to Mike's YouTube channel. You can check that out, youtube.com/c/theusedbookguy. So we actually had to look him up. Matthew reached out and said, hey, have you seen this guy's content? I said, yeah, but I don't know who it is. I don't know his name. I don't know. Obviously he's using Scout IQ. He plugs us a lot, which is great. We appreciate that. So Matthew reached out. We learned your name is Mike. So thanks for jumping in here. And Mike, you do, we'll let you do a little shameless plug here. You do a weekly call, from what it sounds like, as well, just for a couple bucks a month or something through YouTube.
Okay, here goes a shameless plug. All right, so I don't charge for nothing. All right, so all I have is a measly $2.99 a month if you join the YouTube channel. So all that's going to get you access to is every Sunday, me and probably 15 to 25 other Amazon media sellers all sit down on Zoom for an hour. There's always a topic I cover related to Amazon. Last week was trying to figure out the mystery of the buy box, because I'm still trying to get it for other categories. And any problems or headaches you have, any questions, they all get answered. And it's always good to be around like-minded people. I think it's the best thing out there is when you have a conversation with somebody else that's doing the same thing, because everybody has different business models. Just because, I say this is the correct way for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So I think it's the best thing out there just to sit down with, and it kind of brings accountability into it, because a lot of us are one people show. So, there's nowhere else to go to for most of it. So you're kind of just stuck on your own. And if you can sit down and say, hey, I'm working on getting my inventory to 1,000, and then we can check back in and see where you're at. you hold yourself accountable, you get better results, and you're always learning from other people. I'm never going to stop learning about the book business. It's just there's always somebody else doing something different, and there's always different techniques to try.
Well, it's the beauty of our industry. Again, the more that we connect and collaborate and network with each other, the more ideas that come of it. And even though we're technically competitors, the more that we can actually bounce ideas around, we all get sharper, benefits the customers. We're keeping more books out of landfills. It allows us just to be sharper and to hone our craft, which is phenomenal. And there, Romer finally makes an appearance. He probably just woke up for the afternoon. I know it's early. He likes to wake up late. So, Romer, welcome to the show. Glad you finally decided to jump in.
So on the topic of like different things that work for different people, so I get it all the time, right? So everybody wants me to go garage selling and do book sales and do the bin. So for my situation, I don't have to, and the experience at the bins and book sales that I've gone to, it's kind of almost a toxicity that I don't want to be involved in. So if I don't have to put myself in that situation, then I kind of don't have to. So it just goes to show, some people literally book business is just going to book sales. But for me, I don't ever even have to step in the door to book sale to be successful.
Yeah. And there's many ways to skin a cat. And I like your analogy of putting different lines in the water, or hooks in the water, the fishing analogy. The more options that you have out there, the more bait you're playing with, the more that you tinker, the better off your business is going to be. And some of those bait that you drop in, you're going to drown the worm. It's not going to work. It's going to be failed. But what'd you lose? A little bit of time. Maybe you printed off a flyer. Maybe you put up an ad. At the end of the day, it's not that big a deal. It's not going to kill your business. And what if it does work? Who knows what you're going to find? You're going to find relationships with libraries, and a lot of those things can help you grow that business. So right now, is your wife helping in the book business, or are you just a one-man show?
So I drag her out when I can. She, like I said, she's full time with the cat and dog toys. So she has her business. Whenever I can get her out, I can get her out. She just scans. She understands, how Scout IQ works and what the numbers mean and all that. But when it comes to, the meat of the business, packing, shipping, keeping track of all that stuff, she's got her own to worry about. So it works both ways because her busy season is coming up here. So I'll actually help her with her business, and that's the biggest convenience of Amazon, right? We don't have to deal with, if you're doing FBA, you don't have to deal with packing and shipping and dealing with all the customer headaches. Whereas in eBay is kind of a whole different beast when it comes to that.
For sure. Do you see yourself kind of flash forward into the future over the next year or two? As you talk about either keeping books, I know your goal by the end of the year is to have a $12,500 month. Do you see yourself hiring? Do you see yourself just staying a one-man show because your cost to be you is so low? Do you want to branch into other products? Like crystal ball, what do you see in your future?
I'm gonna turn this one-man show. I'm gonna max out. So I don't want to work, the 60-hour weeks. I did that before. I wasn't happy. Even though selling books is something I enjoy, I'm to a point where I value my time a little bit more than I do the money. So that's different for everybody. Some people, they'll put in the 70 hours if you're going to see, the crazy numbers on Amazon and everything like that. But for me, free time, I feel like I missed out on a lot. I don't have kids. It's just me, my wife, and the cats. But you still missed out on a lot that you don't realize you're missing out on when you're just going through the motions of working, 6 days a week. So for me, I'm going to grow this as much as I can as a one-person business. When the time comes, maybe I can have my wife involved a little bit more, or possibly hire somebody. But I don't foresee that happening within probably the next 6 to 12 months. I'm looking at a storage unit next, just so I can not have to carry the books up. So when I get a bulk buy off Craigslist, I fill up my car, I bring them home, they sit in my car. And as long as it's not raining, I separate them outside on the sidewalk. So this kind of like to show you, like, there's different things, when you're operating out of the third floor, you got to make it work. So I pick the days and I go out there and I got an eBay lookup pile, an Amazon pile, a dud pile, and then a second in Charles pile, which you have to figure out a way to do something with your duds that are in decent condition. Lucky for me, I have a second in Charles that's 10 minutes away. So I utilize them heavily when it comes to getting rid of my duds, because I don't have anywhere to store the stuff, and I'm not going to carry the duds all the way up here just to carry them back down. So they stay in the trunk and I get rid of them that way. So I'm gonna roll with one man until the wheels fall off, and I feel like I'm kind of maxed out.
I love it. And I think that's one of the beauties of business is you get to pick what the business model is for you. There's no perfect way to run a business. There's no one right way. Dave's got a whole team. I just have, I've got a team in the software side. I've got a team on the online arbitrage side. But for my book business, I have basically one warehouse manager, and then I jump in from time to time. We've kept that fairly small and efficient. There's no perfect way to do it. It just depends on what you're trying to build, what you enjoy doing, and what goals you're after. And if you can kind of build the business to support your goals instead of the other way around, that puts you in a really good spot. Well, Melissa asked if we're going to do Q&A. We will in just a minute. We're going to break here and get to our geek out moments. So if you do have questions, we will jump to that. We've been going just over an hour. We'll go for another 10 to 15 minutes here. So by all means, we'll take as many Q&A as you have. We'll go ahead and drop those here while we get to the geek out moment. And then FBA part-timer said, what happened to John Troutman of the 100 book challenge?
I saw that.
So John Troutman is, he actually moved from Denver. He's out in North Carolina. He's working in a college ministry out there. Him and his wife and their son moved out there. So he moved out there a couple years back. He's still doing books. He's actually doing bulk books. If you remember from the 100 book challenge, he was buying from the Salvation Army. He would buy basically a bin at a time, go through them at that location, bring the winners back with him in his truck, list them out of his apartment in Denver. He actually now has a warehouse. His brother works in the business. They have employees, and they're going through right now, I believe, a little over a truck a month. And they're looking to ramp that up even more. So he is still very much in the book game. His brother is running a lot of that as he's involved with the college ministry. But he's still around. He's still out there, but he's kind of doing the 100,000 book challenge.
We should have him on in a future Books and Bourbon episode. Catch back up with him.
That would be a good one. I'll reach back out to him. I see him from time to time. He's doing very well, and his business is pretty impressive. So that'd be a fun interview to do. So we will get to Q&A. If you do have those, go ahead and ask those questions. Otherwise, we're going to go back around the horn and talk about geek out moments. So I want to start bottom right. Dave, you want to kick us off? What are you learning? This is the part of the show that may or may not be related to business, just something that you're excited about recently over the past week or so.
Yeah. So actually, let me just grab this book here. This is a book that I'm working through. It's by Donald Miller. He wrote or he founded the story brand idea, creating a story around your brand. He also wrote a really popular book that I used to sell a lot of copies of called Blue Like Jazz. But yeah, it's according to the foreword, this can turn you into like a really valuable business asset, assuming you're an employee, in 60 days. And they break it up into 60 different days for 60 different chapters. It's a very, very, I don't know. It's a very difficult way to read. I'm the type where I like to sit down and like burn through a book in a couple of hours, and to like have the dedication and like the consistency to read just like 5 paragraphs each day. It's kind of, like it's like a daily devotional type of thing, or a daily thing, it's, I don't know how much I like it. It's to be determined.
Cool. I actually took the story brand's course. I think Matthew and I took it together about marketing, and Donald Miller, they had a pretty good podcast. I think they put it to bed. I think it's dead. But he had a podcast as well. And then he puts out good content on Instagram. He tells pretty good stories. I think he does a lot of reels now, but he just shares good business insights. So he's somebody good to follow as well. So Matthew, what are you geeking out about lately?
Yeah, so I've been on a book reading kick the last 2 weeks. So I've been mowing through some books that I've had on my list for a while, but I got this random recommendation on my Kindle library. So I downloaded it. It's called The Power of Discipline by Daniel Walter. So I'd seen this book a few times before. Obviously, Kindle knows the type of books that I like. But one of the things that's tough about personal development type books that you'll notice a lot if you guys read some of those is there's a lot of fluff built in, and there's some really good key ideas. But a lot of it is just fluff around their one key idea, which could probably be summarized in like a page or two. So what this guy actually did is this is not a ton of original content in this book. He took kind of the main key takeaways from tons and tons of different major authors and books on self-improvement and self-discipline, and kind of distilled their main ideas and their core philosophies down on like a page or two each. So you can kind of read through this book and get a bunch of different practical things you can apply for self-discipline and improving your routines, all those different things just by reading through this book. And so it's really, really cool that he's able to kind of distill all these things down. And so there's a lot of different authors I've read in the past. Like he mentions a lot of things from The Power of Habit in there. There's even a 1 paragraph thing on the 10X rule by Grant Cardone. And there's like little things in there where he's just taking the main principle this person teaches and talking about it. And so I really liked that. It was a good book. There wasn't a ton of fluff in it because it wasn't just his original content. He was talking about other ideas and the best parts of those ideas. So it was a good, quick read. It doesn't take very long. But The Power of Discipline by Daniel Walter was that book.
That's excellent. So you guys both are bringing up books. You're going to make me feel bad if I don't mention a book in my geek out moment. I've been really interested in the idea, and I've talked about it a little before, of standard operating procedures and just the idea of being like disciplines. So I guess the power of discipline, but having like just organization and having everything written out. And kind of one of the mantras I've been going off of is if it's worth doing, it's worth documenting. And the idea, I've been trying to do it in Notion. I'm not extremely disciplined in there yet, but trying to take everything that we do in our business, from the marketplace to Pallet IQ to Scout IQ to eFlip. I mean, any of the parts of our business, a lot of it, we just do it. We do the work. We've got a great team. Everybody steps up to the plate, but trying to build out those steps. So I've got some month-end tasks now that I do. So every time the calendar switches over, I go in and I've got these little checklists, and it actually makes it really easy. Before, I would kind of go, all right, it's the end of the month. I need to pay my warehouse lease. I need to pay my people. I need to, any of this. And I quickly learned that if you don't pay your people, they let you know pretty quickly. It's kind of a built-in method. I'll joke, but I say it tongue in cheek. It's not a joke. If you want to see somebody respond very strongly, just don't pay them, and they will reach out very quickly. Sometimes they're very kind about it. Sometimes they're very angry, and for good reason. So don't touch someone's pocketbook. Not even a pickpocketing reference. Just if you owe them money, if you're going to employ them, make sure you pay them. So the beauty of it now is it's almost like reading a book. I don't have to start thinking through, oh, it's the end of the month. What do I need to do? I literally pop up my month-end checklist and I just go through it. And it's got everything from who I pay to my year-end reports to running consignment reports. And everywhere I can, it's literally just steps with check boxes. And so I can almost just go on autopilot. And then, of course, the next step where I can would be hiring an assistant or a virtual assistant to actually do a lot of those tasks for me. And you can use Loom or something similar to record those. So it just starts adding a lot of organization, and it's more work up front to do it. But once you do it, you have that freedom and the flexibility then just to say, hey, it's the 5th of the month. Here's the rules that I'm going to go through. Today's the 4th, but I do a lot of the stuff by the 5th. So it's something that doesn't come naturally to me. I probably should find some good books on the subject. Sounds like that discipline book would be right up my alley, but that's something I've been geeking out about. So I've been using Notion quite a bit. Loom is really nice. It allows you to record your screen. It actually does speech to text as well. So in terms of building out a lot of those checklists, it does it kind of for you, and then you can build that out. So Notion's been a game changer, and I'm just kind of scratching the surface with what's possible there. Mike, last but not least, what have you been geeking out over?
All right, no more book geeks moment. All right, so my big geek out this year has been my favorite horror franchise. Halloween has another movie coming out this year. So growing up, Michael Myers scared the crap out of me. So I'm excited that they decided to remake them, and they have Jamie Lee Curtis in them. And this year is supposed to be the last of the trilogy, how it all ends. So come October, I'm going to be waiting for that, and I'm excited for it. And I'm actually looking into because they novelize the movies as well. So I'm not a huge reader. I'll be straight up front with everybody. I enjoy selling books, but when it comes to reading, I'll keep, one or two just to have around to read. And it's usually autobiographies of actors I enjoy, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, his autobiography, stuff like that kind of interests me. I'm a big 80s movie, Gremlins kind of guy. I enjoy working for myself. I can wear graphic tees every day. So Halloween this year, that's my big geek out. I'm waiting for it. It can't come soon enough.
Well, it's just around the corner. You'll get a nice little bump of textbook season here, and then as a little reward for getting through it, Halloween will be just around the corner. Awesome. Well, we've got a bunch of questions that have been coming in. I sound like a guru when I say that, but we do have a couple here, so we'll bring those up. And if you do have questions, go ahead and ask those, and we will try and get to as many as we can. So FBA Part-Timer says, what's up, Mike? Can you explain the buy box? I think most people know what the buy box is. It's the orange, buy it now on Amazon button. There's one for new. It's a new buy box. Typically, it's Amazon or the lowest prime price. And then there's a used buy box, which is typically the lowest used price as well. Are there any differences when it comes to DVDs and CDs?
It's the same thing. Amazon doesn't tell you what specific parameters they want you to have to obtain the buy box. When you start out with DVDs and CDs, you're always going to have the buy box for new items because that's just how Amazon functions. So if you start selling DVDs and CDs today that are new, then you're going to have the buy box. But used, they want to have these set parameters. Just like if you just started selling books, you're not immediately going to have the buy box. So that's another frustrating part when you start out in a different category or even books. It's going to take probably 2 to 3 months for you to get the buy box and actually see what the business is going to look like. Because when you don't have the buy box, you're not going to be getting the sales you probably would if you had the buy box. So you just have to try to figure out, send in fast moving stuff when you start in a new category. That would be my best recommendation. And probably merchant fulfill a little bit as well. So they have the metrics on the back end that, you're actually sending out correct stuff to customers and everything like that.
Awesome. Full T Flip says, Caleb, you're doing OA now. Since when? I will say it's OA for books. So I do a fair amount of like e-flip type deals. I've dabbled a bit. I haven't.
Oh, no.
I think we lost him.
Or he's just being really still, one of the two.
Yeah. We'll give him a second. If not, maybe
see if he kicks back in here.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. We'll go on to another question. There he is.
You want to finish your thought, Caleb?
Go figure. I was going to say this interview is sponsored by Hyatt. That's where I'm staying tonight. And I just crossed the 24-hour mark that I was there and got logged out. So I had to relog back into the internet.
Oh, nice.
So OA, I've been doing a fair amount of Amazon to Amazon flips, like an e-flip type deal, as well as I've been dabbling a bit with eBay to Amazon. And then I do buy a lot of books on Amazon and flip back to like wholesalers. So think like Valor.com, sellbackyourbook.com, those type of deals. There's some arbitrage opportunities. So I have not touched OA for other categories. I'm still stuck in the book world, but a big part of my physical book business outside of consignment is online arbitrage. A couple people asked this question, Mike, how did you get ungated for DVDs and CDs?
I got a whole video covering it, but it's going to cost you $20. You're going to go on to christianbook.com and you're going to find a DVD for $1.99. And you want to make sure you're actually gated in that DVD on Amazon. So when you go to look up that exact DVD, you're going to see like show limitations and you're going to hit apply to sell. Now you want to make sure you hit apply to sell because they might automatically ungate you in that DVD and you don't want that. You want it to pop up where you need an invoice. So it'll cost you $1.99. Get 10 of the same DVD and 10 of the same CD. You can do DVDs and CDs, and they'll send you an invoice. It'll cost you, probably $50 with shipping, and it's gonna expand your business into 2 completely different categories. And a lot of people, you go into some thrift stores, you have competition. They're only scanning the book, so you being able to go look at the CDs and DVDs, that's going to change the game completely for you, especially if you have a lot of competition in your area. But yeah, I got a whole video covering it.
Perfect. So check that out. Do you remember the name of the video, or I'm assuming you can just search the used book guy and ungated? It probably pops up.
Yeah, it'll be right on my channel's homepage because it's one of my top 5 videos. So you'll see it in there.
Perfect. Fun fact with christianbook.com, it used to be christianbookdistributors.com or cbd.com. They actually own the domain cbd.com. So if you go to cbd.com, it'll redirect to christianbook.com, which I'm assuming they're quite large. I'm sure they sell a lot of books and media. I have to imagine that domain is worth a lot of money to the right hands with how popular marijuana is becoming.
Oh, I'm sure.
So who knows? That's probably worth a couple $100,000. Anyway, fun fact. Someone, they didn't log in, so we don't know their name, but Facebook user says when a customer returns your Amazon fulfilled books, your FBA book back to Amazon, does Amazon credit your account? I'm getting some return notice emails, but it's kind of hard to follow the paper trail.
So the best route to do with this is when they send it back, Amazon's going to inspect it. So this is another benefit of selling used media. So Amazon's going to take a look at it and say, hey, can we sell this in the condition that it was listed at? So for us, at least for me, I sell 99% of my stuff is used good condition. So most of the time when you get a return, Amazon, hopefully, as long as that person's not in a miserable mood that day, they're going to say, hey, we can resell this to another customer, and it's going to go automatically back into your inventory, and you're going to sell it again. Now, so how do you keep track of that? Well, personally for me, there's actually programs and softwares out there where they'll manage all that for you. So recently I kind of just got into, I guess this could kind of be my geek out thing too, refunds manager. So they basically track all your refunds and reimbursements to make sure you're actually getting what you're supposed to get from Amazon. So they make it kind of a little bit hard for the average person to go on there and track your reimbursements to make sure the book is getting returned and you're actually getting paid if it's damaged or anything along those lines. So I would recommend looking into like a refunds manager. It's free. They take like 25% if they find something, but you got to look at it this way. You're not going to find it on your own. So even if they're taking 25%, you're still getting the 75% you wouldn't have had anyway. So that's kind of where as far as I go when it comes to reimbursements and tracking it. Now it's probably different for these guys because they're much bigger than me, but as a one-man band, I feel like that's the best route to go.
It's still a pretty good option. So bottom line, Amazon should credit your account if a book gets returned. They do withhold the FBA shipping fees and the 15% seller fee as well. So returns do hurt quite a bit on a $100 book. At least it used to be this way. I'm pretty sure it still is. They'll reimburse the like that amount. Like they're going to take it away from you as refunded sales, but you're still going to eat the roughly $20 on a $100 book that worth the fees. If that book is sellable, they'll relist it. And then, as Mike said, there's many softwares. Refunds Manager is one that will help you. And if they don't credit it back to you, or if they don't make it available for sale, sometimes they'll lose it. They will go to them and say, hey, you lost Mike's $100 book. You need to, basically either find a different book and put it in his inventory or refund him that amount. That's what they do. And that's awesome. Sure, I can go look at my inventory, but even at scale, it's worth having something that's automated to go and do that. Along the same lines, Joanne asked, do you dispose of inventory or do you have it returned to you?
I used to have it returned to me. Everybody's situation is different, right? So I live basically down the road from a second in Charles. So I have another outlet where I can at least get something back for most of my books I take there. Now, if you don't have that, I 100% would probably just liquidate it. That's what I do now. If I already sent it, I'll just liquidate it instead of paying the fees to have it sent back to me, because second in Charles really isn't going to give you that much anyway. So I'm to a point now where I'd rather just liquidate it and be done with it. And that's the route I would go for anybody, because as you go, not all your books are going to sell. It's just the reality of it. So liquidating it's the easiest way. You don't have to deal with it unless you have another viable route. If you're heavy on eBay and maybe it's a more valuable book that just didn't sell because it's a long tail book, then maybe it makes sense to send it back. Or another thing I run into is that Amazon has their pricing, their fair pricing. So for example, I send in a game guide. The market says it's, going on eBay for $300. Amazon tells me I can't price it over $80. So this is something I recall to myself, go ahead and list it on eBay for the $250 and get the sale that way. So you just got to pick and choose your battles. That's the best advice I would give. And if it makes sense to have it sent back, then do it. And especially make sure you have something to do with it if you do get them sent back. You don't want to have a room full of duds and you're just going to be deflated about the business.
Yeah. And I would say so for inventory that has value, for sure, you want to get it sent back. I would say even on inventory that doesn't have a lot of value, I don't want the fluff. So I typically dispose. But for those that are looking, if you want packing material, if you want boxes to ship stuff out, you're going to pay the same fee now to dispose as you are going to be to return it. So a lot of times it's worth returning. You can always donate the books or recycle them, and you can get a lot of free packing material as well. So that's a kind of a bonus tip. You can get the boxes if you don't mind opening them back up. It's a way to save some money if you don't mind a little bit of hassle.
The return boxes are always in the worst shape, though. At least the ones I've gotten. Some of them probably better.
Well, you need to bribe your postman or woman and make sure they're not chucking them against your house. This is a good question for everybody. Treasure Tracker asks, if any of you had to start over in 2022, so today, would you still dive into book reselling? I'd probably look for drug distribution. I think there's better margins there.
Fewer trips. Yeah.
Well, more trips if it's drug trips, but
I
Matthew,
definitely.
would you jump back into books?
Would I jump back into books?
Yeah.
Well, my first love is marketing, and that's what I think I'm best at, even though I do love Amazon and selling on Amazon. So if I had to start right away doing something, it would be something marketing related at first, but books would probably be something I'd maybe even do at the same exact time, since it doesn't take too much money to get started with. And like Mike kind of said, it's really a foolproof method of going out. You can spend a certain amount of time, you're going to get a certain amount back, and you can be pretty certain everything you're sending in will sell, or at least a good percentage of what you're sending in will sell. So it's a pretty sure way of making money if you don't have a lot to invest at the beginning. But I'd combine that with my marketing skills to do something marketing related as well, if I had to right now start something over.
Yeah. Mike?
I definitely would get back into books. I think right now with the economy the way it is, and how we talked about, you're going to have money set aside for this. Cash is king. So our leverage when we have the capital is stronger than it would be before all this happened. That's how I look at it. So people want to get rid of things that have no value to them. They're books, and you can go out there and get it at a cheaper price if you're willing to put in the legwork, the flyers, the ads, all that stuff. I think that's the way to go. And I think I would drive to have my average buy price be as low as I possibly could. Not the $2.99, $3.99 Goodwill route. I'm talking get your buy price under $1 per book, mix in bulk with thrift stores, and focus on having a low buy price and not necessarily sales. Focus on your inventory numbers. I kind of sales are going to be there no matter what. My new goals are inventory level based, not revenue based.
Love it. Dave, you've got a big warehouse, a small army of employees. If you had to start all over right now, today, would you stick to books?
Yeah, I probably would.
Any
Yeah.
rationale? It's very, very simple. It's like, yes, I definitely would do that.
Yeah, I know it. I understand it. So
yeah.
What do they say? You can't teach an old dog new tricks.
You could try.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably in the same boat. I love real estate. I love marketing like Matthew, but just, depends on where I am. I understand books. I love the relationships that come with it, especially with our consignment clients. I think that's a really cool part of the business. When we sell on Amazon, we don't really get to meet the end user. We don't get to see their delight in opening a book. And we typically just see the grumpy ones that, found a price tag, or the book didn't meet their criteria, or got lost in the mail. You don't get to see happy customers. So I love the consignment business. I would do books. I'm still doing books. If I had, capital and I was just getting started, maybe I'd pursue other options. But like Dave, I know books. I think the opportunities are still there, especially if you're willing to get outside the thrift store.
Would you document it if you started it? Would you be willing to have a YouTube channel and, everything's on camera from day one?
Yeah, I'm not a huge document guy in general. I don't love social media. I'll post stuff on there. I think it's a great way to network and connect. And I started the blog when I got going. I did the bookflipper.com mostly just as a way, because entrepreneurship can be lonely. And so it was a way to build community, to try and answer questions, establish myself as a product matter expert, but mostly just to meet other people in the space. So I love being, you can call it being a freshman. I love being the freshman. You can be curious. I've got a 4-year-old son. He's incredibly curious about life. And it's super fun when you get to be that person and say, hey, I'm not the expert, but I'm just going to share what I'm doing, and hopefully someone can learn. I'd probably do it, even though I don't love social media. I think the pros outweigh the cons, especially when you're starting out. We'll take just a couple more, and then we'll be respectful of your time, Mike, and everybody else that's watching. We'll wind this down. Nancy says, if ungated for DVDs, are you automatically ungated for CDs, or is that a different process?
It can be. So when I got ungated in DVDs, it actually ungated me in CDs as well. But this is not a 100% guarantee. So it seems like the newer accounts, they make you get ungated in both. So you're going to have to buy 10 CDs and 10 DVDs. But for me, since I guess my account, how the new accounts are completely different than the older Amazon accounts. For me, when I got ungated in DVDs, it did CDs as well. So you could go the route of buy 10 DVDs, make sure that process works for you, feel comfortable going to buy another 10 CDs if you have to. So just pick one, go with that one first, see if it ungates you in both. If not, just go back and spend another $20. I promise you, the first day you go out thrifting, you're going to easily make your $20 back.
Yep. We got Manny, who kind of agreed with the idea of having things returned to you. You get the free packing material. And speaking of Manny, we need to have you as one of our guests on the pod. You've been putting out great content. You're one of our more relevant experts in terms of answering questions in the Facebook group. So I'll reach out to you. We need to get you on the pod. Mike says, I think he wants to dump a whole bunch of duds to you, other Mike. But he said, what are your terms for buying CDs and DVDs for 20 cents each?
I just want to make sure that the cover art's there, the jewel case isn't completely shattered. Like I said, for the most part, when you're buying off Craigslist, you're buying off, another person. So the stuff is usually better taken care of than at a thrift store. So you just want to make sure everything's intact. You want to make sure the DVDs, make sure this guy isn't burning all his DVDs in the basement and they're all counterfeits. But just do an eye test, flip through a bunch of them. And for the most part, you'd be surprised, CDs, stuff you don't think that's worth it's going to be worth it, and stuff you think it's like books. You go and you pick one out, you're like, oh, this is going to be worth it, and it's not, and then you're like, wait, there's no way this is worth it, and it is. Mm-hmm. So you just make sure everything's intact, do the eye test, the same with the DVDs, and just kind of vet people. That's kind of the biggest thing. I talked about it on one of our weekly calls is you don't want to be the horror story like Caleb was talking about. You wind up making a Netflix horror show about you going to somebody's house, and you don't want to buy another reseller's duds. So how can you do that? Well, when you have a conversation through an email, you kind of, you get a person's name, you get a person's phone number. You can do a little bit of backtracking and kind of find stuff out about people. And personally, I've come across a lot of resellers that want to sell me their duds. And you kind of can just be like, hey, I'm a reseller as well. Unfortunately, we're in the same game, and, buying the duds just doesn't make sense. So you got to do a little bit of research. It's not just you show up at somebody's door. You don't want to show up to somebody, and they're an Amazon seller, and this is just the junk they got from somewhere else. And you're kind of, once you get to that point, it's harder to back out of it because you're face to face having a conversation versus through email where you can just be like, hey, unfortunately, this just isn't going to work for me.
Love it. And then Junkman asks, is the guest, so Mike, do you do any merchant fulfilled?
Believe it or not, when I started, I had no clue what I was doing. And I actually did a lot of merchant fulfilling back then. And I kind of learned the hard way, the whole shipping template where I didn't have anything set up. So all my books got to get shipped priority mail. And I'm trying to figure this stuff out. And there's no videos. I do currently have some CDs and DVDs listed merchant fulfilled. I understand how it works. And when the time comes and I do have a storage unit, if that's, what the future brings me, then I'm definitely going to be more involved in merchant fulfilled. But right now, like I said, I'm in the fabric warehouse and I got 10% of the room. So I only have a few shelves. And that's usually for book sets that I get from bulk buys off Craigslist of collections that I've been selling on eBay.
Love it. Well, with that, we're going to wind things down. I know there's a few other questions, but we do need to be respectful of time here. So, Mike, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. You were a very easy guest to talk to. I think that comes from you having your own YouTube channel as well. If people do want to kind of follow your journey, maybe join your group and join some of those calls as well, we got your YouTube link down below. Is there any other way they can reach out, or is YouTube your primary mechanism there?
YouTube's my primary mechanism. I have a Twitter, but like you said, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm not active. I don't have a Facebook. My wife's in, the book selling Facebook group and everything like that. I don't have my own. I have responded to every single YouTube comment I've gotten since I started YouTube. So no matter what it is, I'm going to answer it, and I'm going to give you an answer one way or another. So YouTube's the best way to get me. I'll respond to every single thing you put on there. I got nothing to hide. You want my Craigslist ad, you can get it for nothing.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate your transparency. This is one of our better attended live shows, I will say, and the content and the engagement. So you definitely brought your community with us. So we appreciate having you on. And with that, we'll say one final cheers.
Thank you.
We will sign out, and we'll see everybody next Thursday for episode number 16. Have a good night, everybody.
Cheers.